All right, let's get into it. Today, we are going to tackle a really classic clinical puzzle. How do you figure out what's happening inside someone's lungs with, get this, just your hands and your ears? It's detective work, and it's awesome. I know. It sounds a little bit like magic, right? Especially in our world of CT scans and MRIs. But the truth is, the body is constantly giving us clues. We just have to know how to look for them and, more importantly, how to listen. So, to solve this puzzle, every good detective needs a toolkit. And ours has just four fundamental techniques. When you put them all together, they can paint a surprisingly clear picture of what's going on inside the chest. First up, the one you'd expect, listening to breath sounds with a stethoscope. It's really simple. We're just asking, is air moving the way it should? Are the sounds normal and clear, or are they way louder, or way quieter, or maybe even gone completely? This is always our first, most important clue. Okay, next, we actually use our hands. We have the patient say something like 99 over and over, and we feel for the vibrations on their chest. This is called tactile fremitus. The whole idea here is that vibrations travel differently through different stuff. Think about it. Sound moves differently through air than it does through water or a solid wall, right? Same principle. Then we have percussion. This is where we literally tap on the chest, kind of like playing a drum. See, a normal, healthy, air-filled lung has this nice, hollow, resonant sound. But what happens if that lung is filled with fluid? Or what if it's stretched super tight with trapped air? Well, the sound changes, and that change is a huge clue. And finally, we check for what's called a mediastinal shift. Basically, we're just checking if all the important stuff in the middle of your chest, like your windpipe, is still, in the middle. A really big problem on one side of the chest can actually push everything over, or in one weird case, pull it closer. Okay, so before we can start spotting what's wrong, we've got to know what right sounds and feels like. We need a baseline. So let's lock in on the findings for a perfectly healthy, normal lung. So take a look at this table. Think of it as our map. And that top row, the one that's highlighted, that is our North Star. That's the pattern we're always comparing everything else against. So, to put it in plain English, a healthy lung means you hear clear breath sounds, the vibrations you feel are just normal. When you tap on the chest, you get that nice, hollow, resonant sound, and everything in the middle is sitting exactly where it should be. That's our gold standard. All right, baseline established. Now for the fun part. Let's dive into our first puzzle. This is a weird one. A condition where, counterintuitively, the sounds inside the chest actually get louder. This is called consolidation. You see it in things like a bad pneumonia. Now, look at the difference here. Compared to a normal lung, both the breath sounds and the vibrations are increased, and the percussion sound goes from resonant to dull. So, what in the world is going on? How can a sick lung be louder? Well, here's a great analogy. Think of normal lung tissue as a light, airy, dry sponge. Now, imagine that sponge gets soaked and becomes a dense, wet sponge. That's consolidation. And it turns out sound waves and vibrations travel way better through that dense, wet medium than they do through air. That's it. That's why everything suddenly sounds louder and feels stronger. Okay, so we've cracked the case of the loud lung. But what about the opposite? Let's tackle our next big mystery, the conditions that make the lungs go quiet. So welcome to what I like to call the Quiet Lungs Club. There are three main members here: pleural effusion, which is fluid building up outside the lung; pneumothorax, which is air trapped outside the lung; and atelectasis, which is just a collapsed lung. And here's why they're so tricky. They all start with the exact same clue. The breath sounds are super quiet, or maybe even gone altogether. So if they all start out sounding quiet, how on earth do we tell them apart? Well, this is where our other tools come in. This is the big reveal, where the real detective work begins. Right? Our first clue, the quiet sounds, is a wash. It doesn't help us tell them apart. So we have to dig deeper. What are the tiebreakers that are going to solve this mystery for us? And here they are, the two clues that crack the case wide open, our percussion and mediastinal shift. Just look at that. Each of our three quiet conditions has its own unique signature across these two tests. Let's break it down. First, pleural effusion. You've got a pocket of fluid. If you tap over that fluid, it's gonna sound dull, not hollow. And if you have enough fluid, it takes up space, right? So it literally pushes the heart and trachea away from it. So you hear dullness and see a push away. That's an effusion. Next up, pneumothorax. Now you've got trapped air. Tapping over that is like hitting a drum that's been stretched way, way too tight. You get this deep, booming, hyper-resonant sound. And just like the fluid, that trapped air is under pressure, so it also pushes everything away. So, you hear hyperresonance and see a push away? That's a pneumothorax. And finally, the curveball, atelectasis, the collapsed lung. Because the lung tissue is collapsed, it's dense, so it sounds dull when you tap on it, just like the effusion. But here's the massive twist. Because the lung has lost volume, it creates a kind of vacuum. Instead of pushing, it pulls the trachea and heart toward the problem. It's the only one that pulls. So, dullness plus a pull toward it, that's atelectasis. So now, let's look at our full map again. What might have looked like just a random table of facts to memorize before? It's not, is it? It's a logical guide. You see how by combining just 4 simple techniques, you can follow the clues, recognize the pattern, and figure out what's going on. The whole map is unlocked. And that kind of brings us to a final thought here. You know, these techniques are literally centuries old, but their power to make us think critically, right there at the bedside, is absolutely timeless. It really makes you wonder, in our rush for all this incredible new technology, what's the enduring power of simply being able to see with our hands and hear with our ears?